33rd annual, should we say, NookChat. We've done 33 of them. And we have a special guest with us today, which is DeLinda Owens, which is going to talk about the Farmers Auction House, where she's gonna talk about the family when they first came here to the Everson area. And there's, of course, gonna be slides shown, and she will go through and tell us everything. And we're really looking forward to it. So, DeLinda, welcome.
Thank you. This is actually my mother's project. Much of the work was done by her. She was Virginia Noble. I'm her daughter. And she grew up at the Everson Auction House. I'm working with her notes and childhood photo albums. And there's been a lot of help from her sisters, June and Hazel. I just wish Grandpa could be here to do this for you, because he could really put on a show. Go ahead. I'm just going to give you a little background on Grandma and Grandpa, and I'll try to use their first names, but it'll probably be Grandma, Grandpa, Annie, June, etc. This was right after they were first married. Bob and Vetera's family both lived near the Summit Valley area of Northeast Washington. Both families were well established. Grandpa's family owned fruit orchards. Grandma grew up on her mother's property, known as the Skookum Stock Ranch. They met at Vetera's home when Bob was working, selling, and delivering fruit. And they married in 1928, and this is right after they married. Our family teases that the tent was the first home. And that's very possible because Grandpa was working the harvest on all the big hay ranches, the wheat ranches. And when my husband Norm was doing the pictures, and there was more like this, he noticed how dark Grandpa's face was, but it was from being outside the work that he was doing. Go ahead and do another picture for me. And he's on the harvester here. I had to do some research on this picture because the caterpillar track threw me. And this is actually possibly the one of the old Holt Caterpillar tractors, and this was when Holt and Caterpillar got together to do these. And the blades there cut a swath 24 feet wide.
Wow.
And being up on that thing, operating that, you've got a person operating the combine, somebody operating the tractor. Very hard work. Another one. This was a farm that he worked on 3 years, and he is the second man back. He was there 3 years, and this is where you would go, you know, you'd have your wife with you, and you'd have to stay on the farm and work, and so that's what they were doing. And Grandpa has a team of mules. These aren't his own. These were provided by the farm. And there's a lot of stories about dealing with these mules. In fact, he lost this job because the mules got away with him, and he mowed down a very important flower bed. But they moved to the Chewelah area. You can go ahead. And this is where he got his auctioneer's license. I like the wording here, cry your sales. And he had planned on making Chewelah his future home, but it was 1929, Depression, everything changed. Okay, another picture. This looks a little grim, but I think it was taken on Grandpa's folks' place because his mother was present when the little baby was born. When Mom and I first found this picture, we didn't know who it was, but that bright and little shiny baby was just something else, and we named the picture Glamour Baby. Actually, the date on the truck is 1931, so the Depression is in full swing. And if you look at the door of the truck, it actually says auctioneer. And this was Grandpa's truck. The children are his oldest child, Angie, and the little bright baby is his daughter, Hazel. My mom looked at this picture and looked at it and looked at it because Hazel was glamorous all her life. And Mom said, well, she was just born that way. Okay, let's do next picture. Okay, this is the family when they had moved, they moved from Chewelah, and they were living in the Nile Valley area near Natchez, near Yakima. And the baby is my mom, Virginia, and it's 1933. Grandpa was working at a mill. The flooding happened, and this happened in December of that year, and it was the worst on record. The family had to go to the schoolhouse with the rest of the community. Mom said she was told her baby clothes were hung on the Christmas tree to dry. And people had to just leave. It was too bad, it was terrible. And they had to pack up in the truck, 4 little girls, one's a baby, take what you could and get out. And they left the area. They came out to Pacific City. I asked Mom, why didn't they go back to their home? And she said there was nothing to go back to. So this was pretty serious. They came out to Pacific City, and they landed in Berrydale. Bob worked for the WPA, and he also worked building the Lake Meridian School, which Virginia said she was attending at the time. So there was a time period they were out on the coast, and they bought a house from a man named Henry Wiggins, who keeps appearing. They later moved to Ballard and lived in a large home that had been a boarding house and started the Ideal Fuel Company. This was the war years, and so Grandpa was not taken for the war because he was an important job of supplying fuel. Mom's notes say that Henry Wiggins was also involved in the fuel yard. They sold the fuel yard late summer of 1944 and then started the Ballard Bargain Store. Grandpa was doing auction sales all this time, and I have an idea the auction sales is what carried him through. There was a story that Mom told me about the fuel yard, and this just lets you know how resourceful my grandmother was. One of her jobs was to drive the coal truck to Black Diamond to get the coal for the fuel yard. And I know people drive your SUVs and things now, and you think that's a truck. It's not. And I'll show you the truck later. Okay, what Grandma had to do was she had to take the truck from Ballard to Black Diamond, and this was an all-day event. She would have the little girls with her. They'd take their lunch, and they would wait in line at Black Diamond to get the coal from the mine. Mom said she remembered that Grandma wasn't big enough to pull on the rope to trip the hopper to get the truck loaded. And she'd do it anyway, and they'd head back to the fuel yard. Well, Mom said one time there was a detour, and this was either the Army or the National Guard. They had the roads barricaded, and they were doing something, and there was a lot of men there. Grandma didn't want to take the detour. I mean, she possibly couldn't. I mean, she's got a fully loaded truck. And her way of coping with this was to get the truck rolling real good, head towards the barricades, roll the windows down. She got up in the driver's side, 4 little girls in the passenger side. They waved out the windows and yelled, "No brakes, no brakes, no brakes." Grandma sailed on through. Everything just parted, and away she went. So, very resourceful. Okay, well, they sold the fuel yard. They started the Ballard Bargain Store. They sold that. Grandpa was also doing auction sales. And they closed the store in the fall of 1944, and again, Henry Wiggins appeared. And Bob appeared and told Bob about the empty Roeder School in Everson. My mom told me that at that time Doc Green was involved with the school, and he either bought it or was going to, but what he wanted to do was create a combination medical clinic for people and veterinary clinic for animals. And of course that was completely unacceptable, and Grandpa ended up buying the school. When Grandpa was there one day looking at it and kind of, seeing what could be done, he had already purchased it, and Wes Langley of the Bank of Sumas came by. asked him what he was doing. Grandpa told him. And Wes Langley said, well, I've always wanted to have an auction. What do you need? Grandpa said, I need to put 4 girls in school. But Wes Langley was there. They became great friends, great business partners, and helped Grandpa with loans. Okay, moving to Everson. Let's go one more. This picture was, when Mom was doing her research, they're very good friends, Carl and Della Johnson of Van Wyck. We're talking with her about it, and Carl turned up with this picture. The pretty girl in the center there is Thelma Olive Van Etten. That was Carl's mother. And I'm not good with ages, but I'm assuming she's 15, 16 there. She was born in 1908, so that puts this picture at approximately 1923. And I've seen some of the other pictures of the school. But we thought this was a real prize when Carl let me copy this and add it in here. Okay. My Aunt June wrote an article. Oh, actually, I have a copy of Grandpa's business card, earliest business card, and he was doing farm sales at the time because the school was not developed yet. And he was also going down to Fisher's Barn in Kent every week and auctioning. And he did an awful lot of farm auctions before things got going. Let's see.
Did you want to show that to the camera?
Oh. Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you get it, Paul? No.
Give me one more time.
Do it one more time. I've got to grab something because I'm
Okay.
missing June's article.
Perfect.
Okay. Go back for a minute. I am missing one of my important pieces. Hang on. There. We're saved. My Aunt June wrote this in response to an article that was published. It's on the table over there, and I'd like to read it to you. She's very accurate, and I like what she has to say here. My name is June Noble Allen. I am the daughter of the late Bob and Vetera Noble. My sister, who lives in Bellingham, sent me a copy of your article about the Everson sale barn. While I enjoyed reading it, I would like to comment on some of the facts, if for no other reason than to keep history updated. The first sale was in the fall of 1946. My mother operated a small lunch counter, as she called it, in the corner of what we called the big room, serving her homemade chili and hamburgers. If I remember correctly, the addition of the store didn't happen until 1948. Art Brew, who owned the berry farm on the corner, later the Hickey Spud Farm, brought in migrant farm workers from Canada, and it was mostly to accommodate their needs. We didn't keep the store open for very long. So if my memory is right, it was in 1950 that the little lunch counter outgrew the big room and was moved to the store location where it is today. The sale barn was our home. We moved from Seattle in the summer of 1945 and lived in the basement, moving upstairs in 1946. We girls, there were 4 of us, peeled poles to build the stock pens and loading chutes. I could write pages of my memories, but that's what it is, my memories. And I've noticed with Mom and her sisters that every little story is a little different. So this is June's, and I'm going to tell you my mother's memories. Okay, another picture. Okay, this is about 46, 47. This was their car. One of the first things that Grandpa had to do was get the area for the livestock going, because that's where you made your money. And the dark area there in the center is the entrance to the basement. And my mom said that was their front door for a while, because they moved into the basement. And Mom told me once during the move, they stayed with Henry Wiggins because he lived in NookChat. They did not have children, but they liked the Noble girls. And Henry's idea of entertaining the girls was to take them to town, which was Everson. They rode in the back of his pickup. Henry liked to play the slot machines, which were located right outside the doors of some of the stores. And I've seen pictures of these, and they were, a lot of the service stations had them. They'd be right outside the door, and they were basically slot machines, and you could play. Anybody could do it. Anyway, Bob had given the girls money, and June was running back and forth to Henry with quarters to play in the slot machines. My mother said he would actually win, and June made a profit. Mom said she wouldn't give Henry her money. When they first moved in, Bob was doing farm auctions and what we always called junk auctions. These were auctions he held outside in the yard of the school. He worked from the school porch with the double doors. As June said, when they first moved in, they lived in the basement. I learned at the last NookChat from Les Sturgeon, who went to school at Roeder, that in the basement there was the kitchen for the school and where the kids ate. So it was probably pretty well set up for simple living. Mom said that her dad rebuilt what she thought had been a coal bin into a dressing room for the girls, and she really liked it, so it was probably pretty small. The blackboards were still in place, and my mom said she had a lot of fun playing school. In my memory, this was the area where Grandma's big back porch was added on, a big utility porch. And when you came out, she had her garden, and then she had a big walk-in chicken house with a huge chicken run. They were colorful, they were fun, but she also had a rooster that was as tall as I was when I was 5 years old. It was a little intimidating. The schoolhouse had 3 very large schoolrooms. This is from Mom's notes. 3 very large schoolrooms, a basement, and a path to a 4-hole outhouse. The schoolroom area that became the house must have been particularly large because they built a 5-room home there. It was quite roomy and comfortable, plus a very small apartment upstairs where Grandpa's mother lived for a while. There was actually a stairway, the double doors you go in now, there was a stairway inside that took you upstairs. And then the big room, which took you upstairs. And the big room was the large classroom right inside the double doors. And at the far end, it opened into what was the coat room or cloak room, and that's where the cafe is at today. And Mom said it was kind of an enclosed porch that had the hooks and the shelving and stuff for the kids' coats. At one time, there was a much smaller lunch counter inside the big room, and At one time, there was the smaller lunch counter inside the big room, and the larger lunch counter where it is today. My mom told me that she occasionally had to work that lunch counter by herself. I think she said she was 14, and she did not like having to do that. Mom told me once when she was helping out at the lunch counter, there used to be a man that would come in and he would order a cup of coffee and he would sit there and let it get cold. And then he would complain loud and long about that cold cup of coffee. Grandma would come over and graciously take it and get him a fresh cup. Well, one time my mom, just a young girl, she had to take care of him. So she took his cup and she set it on the griddle and got it nice and hot, cup and all. And she took it back to him, and he didn't see the hot pad she was carrying. Well, he grabbed that cup and he tried to take a drink, and he got burnt. And Mom said that he cursed her and he yelled at her and he embarrassed her. And she said, but he never did it again. Okay, next picture. This is the truck that Grandma was driving for the fuel yard.
Oh,
Yeah. And it's, I don't know what that is, 1930s something. and there's a goat. My mother complained about drinking goat's milk. I wonder if that's the culprit. Okay. Grandpa had to get the cattle sales going. This is where you make your money. In this picture, what you're looking at is where his cattle barn had been added on. And as June said, the girls peeled poles. Anytime I talked to my aunts about the auction barn, you always got reminded about how many poles they peeled. Go on to the next picture. Close-up of the truck. It's actually a different picture. That's Grandpa, Grandma, Bob and Vetera. And I know that when they first got going, Grandpa was away probably working doing sales, and Grandma was there one winter by herself, and I know that 1950 was the big snow, but this was, I think, before. And everything was freezing. In those days you had to drain the block in the vehicles, and she went out and drained all the vehicles and all the things that were around there. But she didn't quite get it right. I guess she didn't take all the plugs out. Engines froze anyway, but she tried. Okay, another picture. This is the back of the barn. These are some of the chutes that were built. I don't know the men that are there, but you can see the peeled poles. Another picture. Again, this is the cattle chutes in the back. This is where the trucks would come in and unload. Another picture. This is Dr. McKenzie. He was the vet there at the time. All the animals have to be tested before they can be sold. And another picture. This is actually John Hoy. It's a good view of the cattle pens. And then the next picture. This picture to me is kind of sad. Those horses are practically twins. They're obviously a perfect match team. These pictures are dated about 1947. People were letting go of the workhorses. It seems kind of sad. Next picture. This is my favorite. This is inside the area where the cattle were sold. And the lady standing is Mrs. McKenzie. The gentleman seated is the doctor, Dr. McKenzie. That's Grandpa standing. And this is Sidney Vanderveen over here in the ring. And the picture right there by Grandpa is the Pharaoh's horses. That was a picture my mom wanted really badly, and that one went to someone else, but they purchased a copy for her. Next picture. Okay. When you're in the cattle ring, this is the left side of the bleachers. I'm not sure what's there now, but when we were there, this is the left side. Again, 1947. The darling lady with the little hat, Mom identified as Minnie Hoy. She was very dear to Mom. Next picture. And this is on the right side. Again, 1947. Next picture. And this is back looking at where they worked at. Grandpa is actually down here in the plaid shirt helping herd calves. And that is Dr. McKenzie and his wife. During my time period, Virginia Sanford was the clerk for the auction. And next picture. I think when I was a kid, the rail may have still been low like that, the fence around there. And when you're a little kid, when you're close to the outside of the fence, it's a little scary. You know, the animals are scared to death. Some of them were huge. I can remember the men that were in the ring sometimes would have to get up where Grandpa was at to get away from the stock because they were scared and they were big. I would not have liked doing that. My dad helped out a lot with the cattle area, and I was kind of his little tag along, but I was pretty scared that time. Since then, or actually in my time period, the fence had been improved, and it was still scary. The animals were so afraid. It was still scary. My dad would always be in the crowd when we were there. He and Grandpa had signals going back and forth, sometimes just to get the bidding going. Grandpa's crew was there to spot bids. They'd make that yip noise to let Grandpa know somebody had bid. In our time, my cousin Helen, she did the work of putting the tags in the cows' ears. She was just a girl. And I was scared to death that Grandpa was going to make me do it. Everybody helped out. We all worked. And my cousin Marilyn, who was Helen's younger sister, she helped Dr. Ebright at that time, and he was the one that tested all the cows before sale. Marilyn went right along with him, and then went back into the office to finalize the testing. There was a lady that attended every auction, and this was Emma McMillan. I knew somebody'd laugh. And
I went to school with Albert too.
okay,
At Forest Grove.
Well, it got to where Grandpa wouldn't start the auction without her. Okay, next picture. Okay, this is after they got the auction corner grocery going. This is Vetera, this is Grandma. It's the earliest one, I think, because there's less advertising and less stuff around out there. They had gas pumps, and as June said, this was to accommodate the needs of the migrant workers. Next picture. And this is a little later on. The girl on this side is actually Aunt Hazel. Ladder down here, they're probably still working on it. Next picture. This is, again, the man in the middle looks like Grandpa. I don't think it's him. But the girl standing on this side is Virginia, June, and Hazel. I don't know who that lady is. And it looks like motor oil was doing rather well because the window is full of motor oil display. And the next one is Annie June.
That's good.
And the one that is getting the fill up is my mom, Virginia. My mom was a lot of fun. In fact, the whole family was a lot of fun. This was just too good not to show. And I didn't ask permission. I didn't want to be told no. You can actually see a little bit of the store through the door.
The Ard's ice cream was made right here in Everson.
Okay.
Yeah. Where the fire hall is.
And it was probably good too. Okay, next picture. This is my mom down at the corner of the store. And the one little flyer there is for the Shriner Circus. There used to be a circus that came through Everson. And Mom said that the person who managed or owned the circus attended the auction. And my grandpa was known for being kind of an entertainer. And the owner said, "You put on a better show than I do." Okay, next picture. This is possibly when it had been changed into the lunch counter, the cafe. And this is Bob and Vetera's oldest daughter, Angie, her husband, Willard Alex, and that's a little baby Helen there. The gas pumps are still in place. Willard was a tremendous mechanic, and I'm pretty sure there was a little shop added on to the end, and I'm not sure if he was actually had a little business there. I asked his daughter Marilyn, and she hadn't been born yet. She said she just couldn't remember. Angie and Willard divorced, and Willard was just too valuable of a person. My family didn't let him go. I remember my mom telling him, "You'll always be my brother-in-law," and he was always Uncle Willard to me. He had the Willard's Auto Repair at the Fountain District in Bellingham.
Okay,
And he worked on our cars for us, and you don't let a good mechanic go.
that's true.
Okay, next picture. This is my mom, Virginia, ready to work the lunch counter. Next picture. And this is the interior as I remember it. The lady standing on that side, we believe, is Mary Elmore. The lady in the colorful dress is my great aunt Myrtle, and the gentleman is my great uncle Garl. These were Grandma's brother and sister-in-law. There was always this is pie along both sides. They sold an awful lot of pie. They sold the pie and coffee, hamburgers that you dressed up yourself. Everything you needed was right on the counter in front of you. I would have loved to have eaten the pie. I was kind of limited to just getting ice cream bars. One of my early memories, I was probably about 5, and my dad had given me money to go get myself an ice cream bar. So I went in, and the ice cream thing is right there by Uncle Garl. Annie June was helping out in here, and she came over, and I gave her my dime, and she gave me my ice cream bar, and she gave me my dime back. So I went out and found Dad and gave him his money back. Well, that's not good. You have to learn to pay for things. And he gave me a talk on that. So the next time I had him go with me to get ice cream, and I gave Annie June my dime. She gave me my ice cream. Dad told her that DeLinda pays. And we were walking out, and I was behind Dad, I was only about 5, and somebody grabbed me by the seat of the pants, pulled me back. It was Annie June. She shoved that dime in my pocket and pushed me out the door. This is kind of how Annie June and my dad got along. Okay, next picture. The lady on that side is the little lady that was inside there, Mary Elmore. And this is dated 1960, and this building is no longer there, but this was the junk sale room that was added on. Grandpa originally did the junk sales just in the yard. He worked off the porch. And this, again, the girls peeled poles, but this is the back of the junk sale area. Okay, next picture. Okay, this is inside, and this has to be before 1951 because the lady with the black hair with the braid pinned up is my grandmother from my dad's side, and she unfortunately passed away in 1951. So this is sometime before 1951. But this is what I remember it being like, standing room only, Grandpa having a good time doing the sales. He's right here facing the camera. The lady over there is Edith Gerber doing the clerking. The junk sales were a lot of fun. Oh, I wish I had a picture of Pete Chaudeny. I had to have some help with that name. He managed the junk sales for Grandpa, checking on all the stuff that came in, and he was the nicest man. He kind of looked after all the grandkids. If we were working where he was at, he was just really, really nice. And there was a stove in this area that had come from what we call the big room, and it was huge. I actually have it. My husband measured it for me this morning. It's 6 feet high and 7 feet around. And it's wood, and that's what Grandpa used to heat this area. It was a great place to get warm.
I see that.
And sometimes people would bring things to the junk sale that, wasn't really that good in boxes. And what Grandpa would do is he'd bring the box up and he'd look in it, slam it shut, and you'll give me a dime. And it was kind of fun to get these boxes. because you didn't know what you were getting. And I think I've still got some of them. The junk sales, like I say, were a lot of fun. There was a lot of very nice things went through there. And in fact, my home, I have Victorian furnishings that my parents bought. Walnut bedroom set for $15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, there's no pictures of what we call the big room. And that is where you go in, today, it's where you go in the double doors. And it was one of the school rooms, and this is where, at that time period, it was for people to relax and socialize. And it opened up to all the other parts of the building. And then from there, you could go into Grandma's house. There were doors to the office, doors to the cattle sale area, and the door to the lunch counter. It was like a combination museum and hunting lodge. The walls were hung with mounted trophy heads of different types of deer. There was a mountain goat that I was fascinated with. I think there was a bear. There's others I can't remember, except the giant moose head. I'll never forget that. The walls displayed all kinds of interesting antiques, a lot of local pioneer stuff that Grandpa had accumulated. And there was a very heavy set of, ox yokes. Let me get a drink. And these are heavier than what I've usually seen. The part that goes across the animals' backs was about that wide. And Grandpa had the information of where they came from typed on a little card, and it was taped on top of it. And these were mounted on the wall up by where you went into their house at. And my dad used to hold me up to try to read what was on that card. And I was too young, I couldn't tell what it said, but I kind of remember the dates, like 1860, 1870. And these were built in Everson and used in the Deming area. And it was something that when the auction barn was sold, my mom wanted these so bad. And he wouldn't sell them, but he made a trade with my dad that if my dad would pay for Grandpa's death expenses when that happened, that my mom could have the ox yokes, and we have them. Get a drink. Okay. The other thing that went on in the big room, my cousin Helen, who was the oldest one of the grandchildren, Grandpa started a candy counter. He was always trying to help us make money, learn how to make money. So he built this candy counter. It was huge. Helen operated it, and the rest of us helped out a little bit. And it ran for quite a while. Pat Hickey, who was here last time, remembered it.
Yeah.
And are you there, Pat?
I am.
Okay. Anyway, it ran for quite a while, and one morning when we'd come in early to help before the auction, Dad and I walked by it with Grandpa, and there was nothing there. And my dad said, "Bob, where's the inventory for the kids?" And Grandpa laughed and he said, "Worst investment I ever made." He said, "They just gave it all away." And the moose head that was there, that hung on the wall where you go into the lunchroom or lunch counter at, and it was huge. I've never seen anything like it, and the room really wasn't high ceilinged enough to display it, so it was kind of low down. I was terrified of it, and I was afraid to look at it. I would skirt around it. Of course, you know, I'm like 5 or 6. And people would see that I was afraid of it, so they would grab me and pick me up and stick me up to that thing. And of course, its head was bigger than my body, and that terrified me. And they tried to make me feel better by saying, "Oh, don't worry, they're wild animals and they live way out in the woods." Well, at the time, we lived way out in the woods, so I didn't feel any better. But it was a wonderful social area. Grandpa had the walls lined with chairs and couches. There was one chair in particular that was made out of large cow horns. A lot of unique things, a lot of antiques. It was nothing for that room to be standing room only. You couldn't even get through it. The farmers, the cattle buyers, everybody smoked big cigars. It was a different time. Okay. Next picture. This is a little bit, I have a couple of pictures inside of their home, and this is Grandpa with a little baby Mike. And his clock collection is behind him there. And Mike was born about I think Mike was born 1950 or so, 51 maybe. He had a huge clock collection. In fact, I think I have the mantle clock that's right here. And I also have the picture on the other side of him. One of the things that would happen with those clocks, he had a huge quantity of them upstairs, the apartment. No one was living in the apartment at the time, so he had huge quantities of clocks upstairs. And when Mom and I would go to visit, we lived at Wall at that time, and when Mom and I would go to visit, we'd go upstairs into that apartment because there was all kinds of neat stuff up there, musical instruments, Grandpa's clock collection, a lot of fun to go up there. And we'd hear Grandpa come in downstairs. And he sat in the middle of the living room, and he had a swing rocker, real comfortable, but this is where he came in to rest. And Mom and Grandma, now this clock collection is right over the top of where he's sitting. They'd wind up all those clocks, so they'd chime at all the same time. And they'd tell me, go downstairs and watch Grandpa and see what happens. Well, poor Grandpa. They had a big dining room. This was also Grandma's art and craft room. And she also had kind of a big work desk that was underneath they had the big schoolhouse windows, so you had lots of light. She taught us kids all kinds of crafts: needlework, quilting, painting on fabric, embroidery. She'd send you home with supplies. She taught us how to draw. She played drawing games with us. One of my favorites was she'd have you cover up your picture and draw the body of an animal. Okay, then you'd cover that up, and then somebody else would draw a head. It's just that you didn't know what kind of a body was there. We had a lot of fun with that game. The other thing that we did, she liked to serve us tea and read our tea leaves. And she always found a horse in mine. And one of the things that we would do there in the evening, and this was something that was necessary, was tie tags. And I used to fall asleep on her couch trying to help tie tags. But this was the tags that went on everything that came in. They had to be numbered, had to have a little wire attached. We spent a lot of nights doing that. And in Grandma's dining room, there was a lot of big family dinners, always lots of friends, always lots of people with them. And on auction day, Grandpa would be in the kitchen serving shots of whiskey to the cattle buyers, to the farmers. Mom told me that when she was growing up, you never knew who was going to be at the dinner table. And she told me that Grandpa used to give work to transient men who then ate with the family. And the house rules were that they had to shave and wash up and wear a clean shirt to the table. And if they did not have a clean shirt, Grandpa gave them one. My grandma was very serious about not wanting these shirts back, and she wasn't going to wash them. So if you think about it, it was a pretty good deal for these men. You got some work, some pay, a chance to clean yourself up, a hot meal, and you left with a clean shirt. But that was Grandpa. He helped people. Okay, next picture. This was inside the back porch that was added on. That is my dad, my mom, and myself. My grandma, she did everything. She grew house plants. Dad is reaching up to show how high that cactus is. she'd have us back there. She hatched out her own chickens. She taught us how to do that. Tons and tons of crafts and fun. One of the things that Grandma did that included all of us was she started a stone castle. And she had us collect rocks for her. And she had a platform about that big in the dining room. And she glued these together and she created walls and had all us kids collecting the rocks. Anyway, she got the first room done and that was real cute. So she got another platform on top and we built another second story. Well, this thing kept going. When you've got over a dozen grandkids collecting rocks, you can make some progress. Anyway, it wound up in the corner over here of the back porch because it got so big. And she kept building and we kept bringing rocks. And I remember my dad reaching up to touch the top of it. He's 5'7", so this thing was getting up 6 feet high. And she did, arched doorways, windows. She had little Cracker Jack animals, made scenes you could look in. It was really a wonderful, you could hardly wait to get there each week to see what she had done with it. Anyway, we were in the living room with them one evening, and there was this horrible, long, drawn-out, crashing, banging, clanging noise. It sounded like a truck had hit the back of the house. And everybody jumped up. Didn't know what happened. And I remember Mom and Grandma and I had to go in the bedroom, and Dad and Grandpa were wondering what was going on. And of course my dad's solution to it was to go out the front door of the house, sneak around in the dark, see if he could see what was going on. Grandpa held him off from the kitchen. Anyway, there was nothing there. Dad came in and they finally looked, and it was Grandma's castle had collapsed. So that was the end of that project. But at least the truck hadn't hit the back of the house. Okay, next picture. Okay, this was, I guess when you have a truck from the 1930s, the 1940s is your new
40s.
truck.
Yeah, 40.
And this is Grandma. Mom said it was at Christmas time. And this has got to be 47, 48, 49. And this was the truck. He used it for a long time. Myself and my cousins all remember riding in it. Sometimes you wonder if you really did. This is taken at the back of the auction barn. Next picture. This is Grandpa, same day. Cowhide vest. There was one of my cousins, Dell, particularly adored Grandpa, and there was a copy of that vest made for him. And being a kid, he just lived in it. Well, his mom, Hazel, she had to clean it up, and the cleaning process ruined it. About killed Dell, but anyway. My grandparents were so good to all the grandkids, so much attention to each and every one of us. Okay, next picture. And this person was identified as Bill. I just thought he had a cute car. But it shows the front porch of the school, and that front porch always had wood stoves on it, the old lovely wood cook stoves. But this was the time period when people were getting rid of them. And even when I was there, it was just piled high with the stoves. Okay, next picture. This is actually Grandma's sister, Helen, and it's just showing the close-up of the stoves and stuff that were there. Okay, next picture. This is the parking lot. Again, this is a 1947 picture. The person there is Lauren Owens. He's 16, and in 1954, he became my dad. Okay, next picture. This is Auntie June with her dog. I think the dog was named Freckles. And what this shows over in the corner is what my mom called the path, and that was the original outhouse that was there for the school. And four-holer, which Mom said was great since they had 4 girls. in Les Sturgeon's presentation, he described the outhouse for the boys, and it was not as nice as what the girls had. The farm wagon behind June, there was always one of those around because Grandpa used it for a platform to work off of when he did the outside sales. Next picture. Okay, this is my mom, Virginia, Annie June. Let's see, the date on this picture on the plate is 1947. One of the things that Grandpa did for the community was if there had been, somebody lost a barn or a tragedy in the area, he would host a fundraiser for those in time of need. And he would do the classic box social, and he had 4 daughters to contribute. My mom told me that she'd been auctioned off so many times over the years, and she said usually to some disappointed older boy, because apparently Grandpa wouldn't, when he sold a box lunch, apparently he would not tell you which daughter you were getting. And Mom said that she would always end up eating with some disappointed older boy who wanted her older sisters, not her, not little Virginia. And if Grandpa did not make enough money with the box social, take a drink and tell this one. He would have what he called a tie sale. And of course, this was the era, this was a, social event for the community. People dressed up nicely. The men would wear ties, or they better. Because when Grandpa held a tie sale, his crew would go around and collect your ties. And then he would auction them off. And anybody could bid on them, but people generally bought their ties back. If you did not have a tie, his crew, and it was usually 3 men, they'd take your socks. I can actually remember people putting ties on for this. Okay. Grandpa was still doing that when I was there, and this memory is burned in my brain. I was about 5 or 6, and my dad and I were at one of these, and the crew came around to collect the ties. Well, my dad didn't have a tie, and they approached him, and he said, "Oh, I don't have to do this. I'm a son-in-law." Well, they decided to take him anyway, and that scared me to death. I thought, oh no, he's not going to do it. We're going to have a fight. And I looked up at Grandpa on the platform, and he was getting ready to jump down, and the look on his face said, oh no, he's not going to do it. We're going to have a fight. Anyway, the crew backed off. Daddy took his shoes off and gave him his socks. And Grandpa auctioned them off. The crew tried to buy them, so Daddy had a hard time getting his socks back. But anyway, that scared me. Okay. Next picture. And this is dated 1950, 1951. That was that big snow that everybody dealt with. This is you can't see it too well, but it's a caterpillar trying to clear the parking lot. My dad told me that he lived at Wall at the time. Actually, the Wall Road was their driveway. That he got lonesome for my mom. Of course, she wasn't my mom then. They started dating when she was 15. And he was supposed to have made some death-defying run from Wall to the auction barn in this horrible weather to see Virginia. Okay. Next picture. This is another one that was too cute to leave out. Grandpa did an awful lot of camping, fishing, hunting. Pat mentioned that. This picture is Grandpa's truck in the back. My mom, I think that's her burro, Jill. I'm not sure which this one is. This is Annie June, Edith Gerber, and Oscar Larson. Mom dated this at about 1950, And this is at Squaw Creek, and I have no idea where that's at. But Grandpa would haul everybody in his truck, and the girls would pack in with the burros and set up camp and cook and take care of everything for the men that were hunting. Okay, next picture. This is my grandma. This is at the back of the auction barn. This is how I remember her the most. She made pretty cotton dresses. She always had the grandkids around her. I think like that's my cousin Jean, grandma, possibly Marilyn. That might be Dell or Andy. They had so much time for us. The auction was so much work. But I don't know how they had so much time to care about all of this so much and provide for us. They were the best grandparents ever, and of course it's wonderful being connected to an auction house because of all the stuff you can get. But this is my memory of her, what it was like there. So, but anyway. That's the end of it. Any questions?
When did your grandparents sell the auction house?
We were trying to determine that, and mid-60s. I know that they were gone by 1965 because we have a picture of Thanksgiving, and they were living on Pacific Street. I don't think he really wanted to sell the auction barn. It's a pretty hard job auctioning all day long. He retired when he was 62. He then he started a small auction where Mars Heating is at on the Mount Baker Highway there by the Noon Road. And he had a small auction there, which was great for me because it was right where we lived at. And he did that for a few months. They moved down to Enumclaw, and then from there they moved over to Eastern Washington. And he didn't live very long. He died when he was 68. It was in 1971. Grandma lived quite a bit after that. Like I say, I don't think he wanted to sell the auction barn. When you're becoming an auctioneer, one of the things you do is that you apprentice, and you have to work with another auctioneer. And Grandpa always had people doing that with him. But when he decided to retire, he had another auctioneer who was going to take that over. And I was with my dad in the cattle area, and Grandpa was auctioning. He introduced the new auctioneer, and everybody kind of knew Grandpa was on his way out. And the new auctioneer took over, and nobody would bid. And my dad was standing there, and he just said, "Oh no, oh no." People wanted Bob. They wanted to be entertained. They wanted Bob. And I think that was probably what helped determine that they would actually leave. The family was very upset when they sold it. We'd all literally been there. My parents thought about trying to buy it, but it would have been just simply as a residence. So we didn't keep it.
You mentioned about the box when he slammed the lid shut on him. My uncle bought one of those boxes for $1.
What'd you
And
get?
I can't remember all the junk that was in it, but it was all junk.
Oh, yeah. Well, the upstairs of my dad's garage was full of those boxes, And if you needed something, you just started going through them. And in one was this hot water bottle shaped like Jane Mansfield. This is what you'd get. Anyway, that sat up there, and I put it on eBay here a few years ago, and I did quite well with it. So there wasn't always junk in those boxes.
I could tell you a story about Bob. One time I was out there, he was always chewing on his cigar.
Oh, God, the cigars.
He always had a cigar in his mouth. I told him one time, "You sure chew on that cigar?" He says, "Well, yeah." He says, it's a race between me and the fire and the cigar. See who's gonna get to the center of the cigar first. Always chewing on that.
Those cigars, you know, the only thing good about them was that there was so many cigar boxes left over, and we had everything made out of cigar boxes. In fact, when my dad passed away, he had all his little goodies and valuables in these cigar boxes stacked up. I mean, they were just so handy, and you know, you made stuff out of them. They're a lot of fun. But neither of my parents smoked, and I asked my mom about it once, and she said, I grew up with my parents, riding in the truck between Grandpa and a cigar and Mama and a cigarette. She said, you gotta be kidding.
I was wondering, between the time he left and the present day, was it always an auction house, or was there a time when it was just empty and then the
No.
current owners bought it, or?
No, I think that it just kept going.
Yeah.
I think it did. It just kept going.
My son was out there Monday, and he said that horses aren't selling very good. They sold a riding horse for $50.
Yeah.
And there was a small one like that, smaller one there, and it went for 35.
Yeah, our Humane Society is overwhelmed with all the horses
Yeah.
that people don't want. My horses lived their entire life with us, and they're buried in the orchard, but I couldn't imagine parting with a horse. But Pat in the back was there. In fact, the Hickey family were my grandparents' best friends. Pat's dad, Earl, Mom, Pearl, they were always there. There was always Earl and Pearl.
Did a lot of hunting and fishing together.
Yep.
About 1961, we lived at Lawrence on the end of the Hoff Road. And my dad, Louis Helder, I'm John, he loved hydraulic rams.
Mhm.
And he's set us up with, it's a self-pumping water pump.
Mhm.
And so 1 foot of waterfall coming in will push the water up about 8 feet, or I don't know, maybe somewhere around 5 to 8 feet. Well, the volume has been reduced tremendously, but it's still, through time, will develop enough to keep, if you put 24 hours a day, it'll pump water. Well, he needed water from a stream about 1,000 feet away.
Mhm.
So he says, I know where to go to get the hose. So we went to the auction barn,
Mhm.
to Bob Noble,
Mhm.
and went out in the evenings, we would go, after we had all our cows milked, we would get all this old steam hose. And it was about an inch in diameter or so.
What is steam hose? What is it like? What is it?
It's a flexible kind of a pattern, like a rope type pattern on the
Mhm.
outside of it. And we would connect it together with 1-inch nipples or galvanized pipes that he had
Mhm.
laying around there. He had everything.
Oh, yeah, because he would buy, you know, stuff to resell.
But they
For
were anywhere
himself.
from 10 to 15, 20 feet long. And so eventually we had a water line all the way.
Uh-huh. It was wonderful what you could get there. One of my early memories, people would bring things in from the old farms, and this was dishes packed in barrels. And Mom and Grandma and I mean, seriously, the old barrels, and it was packed in sawdust. And we unloaded those dishes, and they were old dishes. I learned my love of antiques from the auction house, attending the farm sales, which can be kind of sad because people are leaving or something has happened. One of my early ones, the house, this is local, the house had been emptied, and they had taken the carpets out and arranged the furniture on it. Everything was from the 1800s. You know, it was an old farm. It was, you know, it was fun to see it, but it's sad when people leave. One of the things that my grandpa did for our family was he helped everybody, try to help you make money, kind of teach all the kids how to make money. Helen had the candy counter. I think I was the only one that didn't have a job around there, but he didn't give up on me. And when I was probably 5, I had made a little sewing kit from my mother, and I had gotten her empty lipstick tubes and had cleaned it out and made a little pin cushion, put in it, and had pins and needles, and made Mom a little sewing kit. Well, she said, why don't you make one for Grandma? And so I made one for Grandma. And I gave it to Grandma, and she showed it to Grandpa. Grandpa thought that was the best thing ever because he could carry needles in his pocket for slivers and stuff. Anyway, he told me, you make up a bunch of them and I'll sell them for you. Well, I'm only 5 years old. So fortunately I had an aunt that sold Avon, and we managed to get the lipstick tubes. And those days they were metal and they were quite nice. Anyway, my mom helped me, and we made these little pink satin pin cushions, and I got all my little sewing kits together, and she gave me a candy box to put them in, and come auction day, here I was, and I showed Grandpa what I had, and I thought he was going to like auction them off, you know. No. We were in the big room, you know, standing wall to wall people, and he took me around to all of the big tough cattle buyers and farmers and all these scary people, and showed them my little sewing kits, and he thought, you know, keep needles in them for carrying your pocket, and he made them buy them. I was scared. That was the end of me. That was terrible. Anyway, people bought them, and I went back in the house with my money, and my dad helped me. We counted it, and I made about $11. And Dad said, you know, that's more than I make in a day right now. But I made sure Grandpa didn't get any more bright ideas about me making and selling things.
I was thinking, DeLinda, maybe you could just share a little bit about this pencil here.
Yes, I
maybe the
don't want to
picture.
forget,
Okay.
Marv brought this for me from eBay. Okay.
Yeah, they're good people.
Okay, anyway, of course, my grandpa had little, what do you call them, premiums or things, you know, that you gave out to people that had his name and phone number on it. And I haven't seen this before, but it's got the old phone number, it's a little pencil. And I remember Grandpa giving out little combs, little like manicure kits, that sort of stuff. But this is really nice, thank you.
Do you have the picture?
Oh, I put it on the
Oh,
table.
okay, that's right.
We didn't know what to do with it.
There's, I made a picture of this, blew it up, so it's on the table over there, which it's 4-sided, of course, and it's, of course, Bob Noble, and anyway, it's got his address and everything on it, and I thought maybe you'd want to see it, so.
It says always a square deal. And
Yeah,
it's a square
always a
pencil.
square deal. And I thought it was appropriate that I brought this, and before we started, I gave it to her. I thought that was the
Appreciate it.
right
Thank
thing to
you.
do, so. And is there anybody have any other questions or anything to share? Well, I would like to thank DeLinda Owens for telling us about the Farmers Auction House, and it was great. Thank you so much.
I might say that I went to school with all 4 girls. June was a classmate of mine in high school. From the Everson Grade School. I went to a 1-room grade school my first 4 years called Forest Grove, corner of Noon and Central. And then between my 4th and 5th grade, they changed the boundaries and put us into the NookChat district, because Everson, clear up to the Hampton Road, used to be in the Baker districts. My older brothers went to that 1-room school all 8 years. And that's where I knew Albert McMillan. And it's interesting because my one brother was 10 years older than me. Albert was going to grade school there when my brother graduated. 10 years later, Albert was still there when I started in the first grade. Yeah.
Well, Emma McMillan was quite a character.
Yes,
And I don't really remember her from the auction barn. But I met her one night out milking cows. She was milking cows. And it was Mom and Dad and I together, and it was dark. And for some reason, Dad wanted to see her. And we parked at their place and walked out to this huge barn, and one end was just kind of open, and she was in there milking cows. It's dark, you got strangers walking up on you. Didn't bother her a bit. She was very, very, very tough lady.
where was that?
I don't know, I was too little.
It wasn't on the Central Road, was it?
Don't
Because she
know.
used to live on the Central Road.
Yeah, I don't know.
Across from, at the top of the hill there.
Big, huge old barn.
My uncle, he went to school at Roeder out there, and they had a ball diamond where the parking lot peaks out toward the stop sign there now.
Mhm.
And there was a pretty good sized rock in the ball diamond there, and he picked it out and he dropped it over the fence on the Van Dyke side of the fence, and he got expelled for that. And
Oh,
it bothered so many of those kids that about, I think it was 8 or 10 of them, and there was probably only 20 in the whole school. They all quit and they went over to Everson then. And so that guy was only getting half the money he was getting, expelling the kids. And
my family wanted to ask you, was there a stairway inside of the school that took you down into the basement?
No, I think we had to go outside and go down the stairs outside.
I think I showed the outside entrance, or that was what was
Yeah.
there when you were there? Okay.
Yeah, that outhouse had some improvements that you had a picture of there.
That was the girls, but
Yeah.
you described the boys. Now, I have a hard time picturing this.
It just had a log, about a 4-inch log, about 8, 9, 10 feet long maybe.
Uh-huh.
And you had to hang over the log. But it was pretty scary.
Well, I was trying to describe that to my cousin Marilyn, and because she spent a lot of time at the auction barn. She's a little older than I am. And I was trying to describe that, and she said, "Ooh," and then she said, "And then they were boys." Ooh.
There was a splash guard below the log, so you got hung over, you wouldn't do any accidents.
Well, I don't remember that being there, but there was an outhouse for both ladies and
Yeah.
the men.
Yeah.
I think Grandpa had to put in a toilet in the men's, I think, at one time period. There was a
Oh.
toilet in the house, so I used it in the house. But I do remember peeking in there, and my mom had a lot of stories about 4 girls with a 4-hole outhouse, and that was kind of like where they held court, So get away from the folks. But yeah, my family was very interested in your memories of being a student there.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that school was so exciting for me. That Miss Kink, she taught me how to read, and when I learned how to read, I grabbed that book and I run all the way from there clear down to Strandell, where the city garage is now. I live just across the street
Mhm.
from that, and got to read that "See Dick Run, See Jane Run."
Oh.
And I never got over that. I still read continually.
Me too.